If you've ever stumbled upon a piece of metal when digging up your garden, chances are you probably got pretty excited at the prospect of unearthing your millions. And while this sadly isn't a common prospect, it can happen on occasion. These 15 people were all fortunate enough to dig up some life-changing items, some of which earned them millions of dollars. Make sure to stick around until the end to hear about the people who discovered an entire cinema underground. Before we amaze you with some of these unusual discoveries, make sure to like this video, subscribe to The Richest, and join our notification squad. Now let's get into 15 strange things found buried underground. We'll start off with a funny one, because although this first discovery was definitely strange, it was also pretty hilarious once everyone involved had gotten over the shock. A man called Lucas from Sao Paulo, Brazil, returned home from work one day to find that his dog had been doing some digging in the backyard. Pandora the pup had something startling in her mouth. When she opened it, Lucas watched a huge cartoonish grin take over her face. It turned out that Pandora had dug up an old pair of false teeth and decided to have a chew. Lucas assumed that they had likely belonged to one of the members of the elderly couple who lived in the house before he moved in. Our next discovery is something that Pandora probably would have enjoyed digging up even more. John Lambert, a 68-year-old from Ipswich, England, was building a fence in 1997 when he found something incredible: a pliosaur fossil. John kept the huge bone tidied away for 16 years before taking it to experts for some more information, and what he found out amazed him. It turned out that the tremendously heavy bone was the remains of a 250-million-year-old reptile. The pliosaur, a 65-foot-long sea-based predator, was a distant cousin of the modern lizard, and the 16-inch bone, which was thought to be an upper limb, weighed around 15 pounds. Experts said that the bone must have come from overseas at some point, as it wasn't native to England. Let's travel back across the pond to check out another fossil that made its way above ground. A search and rescue team pulled a rare half-ton whale fossil from a Southern California backyard in 2014 that was thought to have originated from a baleen whale. The 16 to 17 million-year-old fossil is only one of 20 that is known to exist, making it an incredibly rare discovery. A man named Gary Johnson was the one who first spotted the whale fossil when he was a teen, exploring the creek behind his family's home. When he first found it, he offered his discovery to the local museum, who turned it down. Little did they know that in years to come, its real worth would be discovered. But that's nothing compared to the treasure that was discovered next. And when we say treasure, we're talking about the chest variety. A man in Austria quite literally struck gold in 2011 when he dug up a 650-year-old chest filled with a fortune. The trove consisted of more than 200 rings, brooches, ornate belt buckles, silver plates, and other pieces or fragments. Many of them were encrusted with pearls, fossilized coral, and other ornaments. It was described as one of the most significant discoveries of medieval treasure in Austria, and strangely enough, the man who discovered it wanted to be kept anonymous. Because of the age of the discovery, it took officials a long time to even estimate the worth of the findings. Our next piece of buried treasure came in a slightly more useful form for everyday life: a bag of straight-up cash. Wayne Sabaj went to pick some greens from his backyard and found something interesting amongst his broccoli and peppers. He found a bag full of $20 bills inside his garden, with a total value of $150,000. At first, Wayne worried that the cash was the result of a burglary and that he'd somehow accidentally end up involved. But luckily, police realized that he'd had no idea. Instead, they speculated that it was taken from a residential or commercial burglary, and said that if no true owner could be found, then Wayne, who was unemployed, could probably keep the money. This was especially lucky as he just spent his last $10. Let's talk about one more purely financial gain before we move on to some other strange discoveries. One Sierra Nevada couple went dog walking on their property in 2014 and found something incredible: a stack of 19th century gold coins. It was believed to be the biggest hoard of gold coins ever unearthed in the United States, consisting of 8 cans containing 1,427 coins, with a face value of $27,980. A total of 1,300 173 were $20 coins, 50 were $10 coins, and 4 were $5 coins. Some were dated back to 1847, while others were more recent. The sale price for the find was thought to be in the region of $10 million, making it the best value dog walk that the couple had ever taken. Our next diggers were over the moon with their mammoth discovery, which might not have benefited them financially but placed them on the historical records forevermore. Daniel LaPointe Jr. and his neighbor Eric Witzka had been digging in Daniel's garden for 4 days without finding anything. Suddenly, they noticed something long and off-white sticking out of the ground. They initially thought that they had found dinosaur bones, and they weren't exactly far off. The bone led to a 4-foot-long skeleton, plus dozens of other bones from the same creature. Local experts told them that they had found the remains of a 37-year-old male mastodon, a prehistoric relative to the modern elephant. The bones were between 10 to 14,000 years old and could have been sold for thousands of dollars. However, the men wanted the bones to be given to science for research purposes. Remember Miley Cyrus's lyrics, "I came in like a wrecking ball"? Our next discovery wasn't quite a wrecking ball, but it was a cannonball. And boy did it surprise its finders in a similar way to how Miley's lyrics suggested. A group of builders in Kent, England had a blast from the past when they discovered a cannonball from the 1700s hidden underground. The ball had been buried 3 feet in the ground and was dug up during excavation work in a garden at the back of a block of flats. It was likely that the cannonball was either fired or dropped and left there back in the day. A similar one sold on eBay for around $700, but the builders decided to offer it to a museum first. You might think a cannonball might be fairly difficult to miss, but our next object is so big that you think it was impossible to hide. In the late 1970s, a group of kids were digging in the mud outside a house in the West Athens section of Los Angeles. They hit something hard that sounded like the roof of a car and called the police. And what they discovered was an old Ferrari. Detectives unearthed a dark metallic green Dino 246 GTS, which was somehow still in surprisingly good condition. Rumors suggested that the previous owner had wished to be buried with her car, and at the time, 2 trucks poured cement into the bunker to discourage car thieves from digging it up. When news got out, people started bidding thousands of dollars for the rusty car that had survived such a feat. What's stranger than finding the remains of a car? Well, finding the remains of a human. One 14-year-old boy from Utah was innocently digging a trout pond in his father's back garden when he stumbled across something extraordinary. At first, he thought he discovered a crime scene before realizing it wasn't anything as sinister. The father and son quickly called the police, who determined the bones were quite old and referred the case to the Utah Department of Heritage and Art. It turned out that the bones were likely those of an American Indian that lived roughly 1,000 years ago. It was established that they probably dated back to the Fremont culture that inhabited Utah and other areas of the Southwest from 700 to 1300 AD. The next finding was as big as a human head, but was much more interesting and almost definitely one of a kind. While digging up their backyards looking for worms to take on an upcoming fishing trip, 2 sisters found something transparent and shiny with a bluish hue. Their first thought was that it was something fallen from space, but local experts decided that it was mineral-based and probably a sort of crystal. It wasn't glass, quartz, a diamond, or ruby, and it was likely placed in the garden at some point rather than having grown there naturally. The sisters decided to keep their treasure until researchers at the University of Waterloo could figure out how much it was worth. If it was worth millions, they said that they'd most likely sell it. That last item might have been old, but it's nothing compared to the woolly mammoth bone that was found within throwing distance of an Oregon school's football field. A construction crew working on an expansion and renovation of the OSU Beavers Valley Football Center found bones belonging to an Ice Age mammoth, as well as bones from other extinct Ice Age mammals, including a bison and what was probably either an ancient horse or a camel. The animals would have lived at least 10,000 years ago, so it's likely that the football field would have been a watering hole many years ago. But strangely enough, because no human remains were found there, the area wasn't considered an archaeological site. So while the discovery was celebrated, the digging continued. Over on Staten Island, one couple found something incredible buried underground: a safe containing $52,000 worth of money and jewelry in their yard. Matthew and Maria Colonna Emanuel knew that there was an unusual silver box poking out of the ground at the end of their garden, but they assumed it was a cable box and nothing more. When a deer destroyed the nearby foliage, the couple decided to do some landscaping and realized that their cable box was actually a hidden safe. Inside the safe, there were all these bags with hundreds of dollars and jewelry, diamonds, engagement rings, dozens of rings, gold with jade, Matthew said, according to CBS New York. It turned out that the treasure belonged to a neighbor who'd been burgled years back. The neighbor was then reunited with their expensive items. Before we end this video, let's talk about two incredible discoveries that took the world by storm. First up, let's venture to Paris to discover a previously hidden underground cinema. Police in Paris discovered a fully equipped cinema and restaurant in a large cavern underneath the capital's 16th arrondissement. Even though there were various unusual and somewhat offensive drawings on the walls, the police had no idea who was responsible for the cinema. They found a full-size cinema screen, projection equipment, and tapes of a wide variety of movies, including 1950s film noir classics and more recent thrillers. None of the movies found were banned ones, which would have maybe explained the secret underground nature of the discovery. There was even a professionally installed electricity system and working phone lines. This last discovery might make you want to go out into your backyard and have a dig. One homeowner in Arizona was shocked to discover a Cold War-era fallout shelter hidden underneath his lawn. John Sims received a tip-off from a previous owner that there might be more than just flowers calling his garden home. After searching through historical maps and wandering around with a metal detector, John found that the shelter was built in 1961 by a company named Whitaker Pools. While some of the steps down to the shelter had crumbled over time, John decided that he would restore it to its full glory. It was made out of concrete and had a domed fiberglass ceiling and was certainly a talking point in the local area after its discovery. That's all for 15 strange things found buried underground. Can you think of any other incredible discoveries that should have made this list? Let us know in the comments below. We hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to The Richest for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.